it's recording. Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about the basics of meditation, of the twin practice, and what it entails. Unfortunately, most of you are wearing masks, and that's okay because we should be wearing masks. But I would say that it's important for everybody to smile. So I can't see everybody smiling, but I'm hoping that everybody is smiling. That's the basic, that's the foundation of this practice. The smile immediately puts you into the present moment. It immediately makes you mindful. The more you smile, the more uplifted your mind becomes. So you don't need to smile too widely. Unfortunately, we don't have a Buddha statue, but I could have shown you. If you see a statue of the Buddha, you'll always see a little smile that he has. And the smile isn't just a physical smile on the mouth, but it's also, you smile with your eyes and you smile with your heart. When you start the meditation, you can sit on the floor, on a mat, or on the chair, doesn't matter. There's no magic in sitting cross-legged, or however you want to sit, you can sit, as long as your back is straight, because that helps you pay attention to your mind as well. And you want to be able to keep a mind that is light, and the smile helps with that. And most importantly, don't try so hard. A lot of meditations will focus on a particular object, and it will be in such a way that it might cause tension and tightness in the head. In this practice, that tension and tightness manifests because of what we call craving. Craving is from Pali tanha, which means thirst, for desire, sometimes it's known as. But craving is more than just desire. Desire in and of itself is pretty innocent. Craving is that mindset that says, I want this, I don't want this, I like this, I don't like this, or I am this. So when you're sitting down for meditation, don't have any motives for how you're going to do the meditation. Just sit, relax, and watch what's going on with your mind. This meditation is supposed to be fun. It's not meant to be something that causes you to be very serious and grumpy all the time. You just have to relax. And actually, as you'll see, relax is quite the crucial step in this process. So when you sit down for meditation, usually what happens is you have an object, as I mentioned before. But this object doesn't need to be focused on. This object can be anything. But generally what we use is what's known as metta, M-E-T-T-A. That's the Pali for what's known as loving kindness. So this meditation is a feeling type of meditation. It's a meditation that makes you experience something in your body and in your mind, and more importantly, in your heart. So how do you begin? So you sit down, you sit straight, keep your eyes closed, remember to have a smile, remember to smile with your eyes, smile with your heart, keep your mind right. And now you want to bring up that feeling of loving kindness. You can use words like, may I be happy, may I be well, may I be at peace, may I be content, whatever works for you. But in conjunction with that, you want to visualize something that makes you happy. It could be a wholesome memory that you have. It could be a image of a little baby that you hold in your arms, or a little puppy, or whatever makes you immediately smile and gives you that feeling of warmth, that warmness in your heart, that warmth in your heart. Once you experience that, then you keep your attention there. You just allow the mind to relax and be in that experience of loving kindness. The words that you use to bring up that feeling can be let go of. You don't need to use that as a mantra. You just say it a couple of times, visualize something that makes you happy, something that is wholesome, and then allow the mind to experience that loving kindness in the form of that warmth in your heart, that warmth in your chest. Once you experience that, you're going to be, for the first 10 minutes, sending this loving kindness to yourself. So that means just remaining with that feeling of loving kindness for the first 10 minutes. After that, the next 20 minutes, you're going to be sending it to a spiritual friend. A spiritual friend is somebody of the same sex, somebody who is alive, somebody you admire, somebody you respect, but they should not be a family member at this point. That comes later. So your spiritual friend could be anybody that you think of who is of the same sex and who immediately brings up a feeling of loving kindness in your heart. Immediately, when you think of them, you smile and you're more relaxed and you're happy, you're uplifted. And you can visualize that friend in front of you. You can visualize an image of them. You can visualize them being in your heart. And then you imagine that loving kindness enveloping them, encircling them. So some people like to imagine that the spiritual friend is in front of them and they're sending out, radiating this feeling of loving kindness to that spiritual friend. Or some people like to just know that that spiritual friend is there and they're sending out that loving kindness. Or some people like to just keep that spiritual friend in their heart and imagine them just, holding the spiritual friend and being happy and sending them that feeling of loving kindness. So loving kindness, basically, what does that mean? That's a feeling that you want that person to be well. You want the best for that person. You genuinely want that person to be happy. And if you find difficulty with bringing up that feeling, just stay with the smile. The smile will start to melt away any kind of tension in your mind, and you'll be able to then feel that loving kindness. So that's really crucial. If you're unable to feel the loving kindness, then just stay with the smile and allow the smile to do its magic. Now, invariably, when you start off with meditation practice, you're going to come with you're going to be facing what's known as hindrances. And hindrances, there are 5 basic hindrances that we understand. They are sensual craving, aversion, restlessness, doubt, and sloth and torpor. It's not important to know these names, or it's not important to recognize the quality or type of hindrance that comes up. A hindrance is basically anything that pulls your attention away from your meditation object. So if you start to see that the mind starts to get distracted by the hum of the air conditioner, or distracted by another thought that arises, or you get irritated about something, or there's doubt in you where the mind is thinking, what am I doing here? Is this right for me? Am I doing this correctly? Or thoughts of restlessness, anxiety, and worry, thinking about the future, thinking, what do I do now? What am I going to have for breakfast? How am I going to beat the traffic? All of these other kinds of thoughts. Or sloth and torpor, which is a mind that becomes very dull. Sloth and torpor arises because the mind's attention starts to lose the awareness of loving kindness. And bit by bit, there's this dullness that arises in the mind, and immediately you start to feel sleepy, and your body might start to bend down, and you start to feel very, very lethargic in your mind. But there are key steps in dealing with these hindrances, in dealing with these distractions. And another point to understand before I continue is you don't need to deal with the distractions if they don't pull your attention away from the meditation object. In other words, if you're staying with the feeling of loving kindness and you start to notice like there are thoughts in the background, there are little wisps of words or thoughts or something going on, But you can notice that they're there in the back, but you're still with your object, you're still feeling the love and kindness, and you don't need to deal with them. Because of your non-attention to them, they will fade away on their own. But when you see that your mind's attention is pulled away from the feeling of love and kindness, then you use what's known as the 6R process. The 6Rs were formulated through the understanding of the 4 right efforts in Buddhism. The 4 right efforts are basically how to deal with distractions. And the 6Rs are just a mnemonic device to understand how to deal with this. So the first R is recognize. So as soon as you see that the mind got distracted and is no longer feeling the love and kindness, that experience is recognized. That step, you've already recognized that the mind is distracted. The second R is release. That is, you release your mind's attention from that distraction. And that's basically seeing the distraction and taking your mind away from that and bringing it back to the present moment. And that present moment is the next step of experiencing the relaxed step. Relaxing is the most fundamental aspect of this meditation. It is through the process of relaxing that you experience a mind that is open, spacious, and clear. And this open, spacious, clear mind is an experience of mini nirvana or nirvana. So there's 2 types of nirvana in that sense. There's the nirvana that you experience when you experience the cessation of all perception, feeling, and consciousness, and then you come to an understanding and gain wisdom. And then there is the mundane nirvana, or mundane nirvana, which is the experience of the cessation of dukkha, the cessation of suffering. So suffering is understood as anything that causes mental or physical pain. And that can be as simple as a distraction. So when you recognize the distraction, release your attention away from it, and relax the mind and body, that is to say, any tension that's there in the mind and body, the result of that, the experience from that, is this experience of the mini nirvana. Once you have this open, clear, spacious mind, then you come back to your smile, because the smile is your anchor point towards experiencing loving kindness. So every time you smile and every time you have the experience of loving kindness, you are conjoining these 2, you're associating these 2. So when you smile, you immediately return to your object of meditation, the experience of loving kindness, and you stay with it. And invariably, again, the mind will get distracted. So what do? You repeat. So these are the 6 R's. Recognize, release, relax, re-smile, return, and repeat when necessary. So that's basically the instructions of the meditation. So I'll just do a quick review. Sit however you like. Make sure you have a smile on your face, smile in your heart, smile in your eyes. And if you need to, you can say the words, may I be happy, or may I be well, or whatever it might be. And then imagine a wholesome image in your mind and allow that image to then bring up that feeling of loving kindness. Or it could be a wholesome memory. Once you stay with that loving kindness, don't do anything else. You don't need to make adjustments. You don't need to figure out, am I doing this right? And don't push too hard. That's really important. The moment you push too hard, the moment you start to bind your mind on that object of meditation, you're causing yourself suffer, because you're causing yourself tightness and tension, which is a manifestation of craving. So if you notice that, just relax. Just pull back a little bit and just stay with the object. Just let the mind rest with the object of meditation. So that pushing too hard or trying too hard is one of the common things that I hear from students is that they're trying too hard, and secondly, that they don't have self-acceptance. Meaning you have to come to a point of radical self-acceptance. And what that means is whatever is happening is just a process. Don't allow the mind to make that personal. Your thoughts, your ideas, your emotions, these are all just manifesting as a result of causes and conditions. And these causes and conditions are mostly out of your control. So just observe them like, clouds in the sky, and allow them to pass. So self-acceptance means whatever it is, whether you're practicing or not practicing, you are completely comfortable with yourself. You're comfortable with your mind, you're comfortable with your emotions, you're comfortable with your body, whatever it might be. The more you have self-acceptance, the easier it is for your mind to be uplifted, the easier it is for your mind to go into meditation. And it's also important to understand that there comes a point where you see that meditation is life and life is meditation. And what that means is this process of the 6 R's can not only be for the meditation formally while you're sitting, but it can also be for your life and your daily living. Every time you notice that you have a worry or an anxious thought, or you're thinking about this or that, anytime you notice that you're distracted from whatever it is that you're doing, you can 6R it. That is, you can recognize that there's this distraction, this anxious thought, there's this concern, this worry. You can release your mind from it, relax, we smile, and come back to the present moment in whatever it is that you're doing. And finally, I just want to talk a little bit about mindfulness, because this is a buzzword you hear everywhere. What is mindfulness? A lot of people have different kinds of definitions of what mindfulness means. Mindfulness means to be in the present moment. Mindfulness means to be attentive to whatever it is you're doing, and so on and so forth. But there's a very simple and practical way of approaching mindfulness. And that is to see that it is observing how mind's attention moves from one object to another. So anytime you're doing the 6R process, you are practicing mindfulness in that regard. And the 6R process doesn't mean just the sitting meditation, but it also means the walking meditation. So you can meditate while you're walking, you can meditate while you're eating, you can meditate while you're driving, you can meditate while you're taking a shower, whatever it is, because it's about retraining your mind from being in a distracted mode of being to being more centered, to being more collected. So, for example, the walking meditation, which you can do 20, 30 minutes a day, whatever works for your schedule, is basically the same as the sitting meditation. You bring up a wholesome image and you allow the experience of that loving kindness to be in your heart, and you stay with that. And then you stay with your spiritual friend and you're sending them loving kindness and you're just walking. So it's not about paying attention to where you're walking and how many steps you're taking and all of these other things. Just walk normally, make sure that you know where you're going, and allow the mind to be centered around that experience of loving kindness. The reason you're doing this is because you're retraining your mind from going where it becomes in this loop of different kinds of thoughts. Naturally, the mind can do walking as well as become distracted by whatever thoughts there are. But if you start to do this practice, you can retrain your mind to be from what's known as the default mode network to the past positive network. What that really means is you're going from a mindset that thinks about the past, or thinks about the future, or thinks about what's going to happen now and worries or has concerns, to a mind that is centered around some kind of task. And that task can be just experiencing loving kindness, being with the loving kindness. And the more you do this, the more you'll see that it manifests in your words, in your thoughts and in your actions. So loving kindness is not about just experiencing it in the meditation, whether you're walking or sitting, but it's actually actively practicing it. And that starts with what's known as right intention. And right intention is about letting go of the need to control things, allowing things to be as they are, and having what's known as non-ill will and non-cruelty, which essentially means loving kindness and compassion. Be kind to yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Forgive yourself for anything that might have happened and allow your mind to accept things as they really are. The more you're able to fill yourself up with this acceptance and loving kindness, the more you can be forgiving and compassionate towards others quite naturally. So it all begins with you. It all begins with your intention. It all begins with how you respond to different situations. If you allow the mind to see things as they really are and let go of the need to control, then your intuition comes into play. And that means your intuition will immediately see the situation and respond to the situation in a loving and kind manner, in a compassionate manner. So these are some of the fruits of the practice. This is what I'm coming to. The benefits of the practice. You'll start to see that, well, you relax more, you don't take things personally, and you allow things as they are without any kind of resistance. And that resistance is basically free. So you'll naturally be able to sleep better, you'll naturally be more forgiving, you'll naturally be more smiling, you'll naturally be more laughing and jovial and so on and so forth. You see, the more you laugh, the more you smile, the more you make jokes, the more you're happy, the easier life becomes. You know, like they say, right? You know, enjoy your life, allow yourself to be happy. No one is making it out alive on this journey of life. So, you know, be happy, enjoy yourselves, be good to yourself and be good to others. And this will all naturally happen if it's not already through the practice of meditation. So again, just to revise, all you do is allow that experience to happen through the process of visual imagery, and then stay with it, and then 6R that process. Are there any questions? How to bring up that wholesome image? Yeah. So first you want to start with a smile, and then you can think about something that makes you happy. Whatever it is that makes you happy, whether it's, as I said, the experience of holding a baby in your arms, maybe the first time you experience something very, very gratifying, very satisfying, something that caused you a lot of joy, caused you a lot of happiness. Maybe it was the birth of your children. Maybe it was when you experienced, something that caused your family a lot of joy. Whatever it might be, but it should be something that makes you happy, something that causes that natural smile to arise. And once you have that image, you're going to notice, as I said, that warmth in your heart, that warmth in your chest. Stay with that feeling. Let that feeling radiate around your heart, radiate around your body. And you can let go of that image and just stay with that feeling and let the awareness, let the mind rest in that feeling of love and kindness. Is that clear? Yeah. Well, the general instructions is that you want to be able to have a spiritual friend that you won't have any kind of lustful thoughts towards. So generally, it would be somebody of the same sex. That's the reason. I would say, yeah, it could be the opposite. it. I mean, some teachers are quite strict about it has to be the same sex, but I'm a little more open and I say, okay, if you're part of you're part of the LGBTQ community, then you can visualize somebody that doesn't bring up those feelings of lust. Yeah, you want to stay with one spiritual friend. You select one spiritual friend, whoever.
The question is not heard by everyone.
Oh, it's better, yeah.
So it has to be one spiritual friend forever, or it change?
So for the time being, you want to stay with one spiritual friend. What's going to happen eventually is that the meditation, the quality of the feeling will change. When that happens, then you have to let me know or let a teacher know or communicate with somebody, because then there's a process where you have other spiritual friends and then your family members and people who are neutral, and then finally the difficult people in your life.
That's the reason we have a second session after 1 week. So you practice and come back, and then you can have more progress. So I recommend that each one of you practice for 1 week what he has taught, and then we will review again in a week's time. So that's the whole idea.
Could I,
So the most
can I ask you something?
Looks like Sister Kema has a question.
Yeah, hi.
Or if you want to say
For the benefit, yeah, I just wanted to ask for the benefit of this program. Could you say the question you hear before you answer it, so we would know what it was, or just, in a capsule?
Yeah,
Thanks.
having experienced this method before for several years now, the toughest part from my own experience, I can say, is bringing up of the feeling of loving kindness. So I found that when you imagine something very simple like cuddling a puppy or a pet, that can generate the feeling, and then actually you let go of the puppy and just keep the feeling in the heart. So something like that, something very simple.
Yeah.
It's not something very high-fi. So some very little joy that we derive from anything. Just maybe seeing a flower or holding a pet or whatever that brings up the joy. That's the feeling that you want to keep in the chest. Vijay, you want to say?
What I did to bring up the feeling that if you have done a Vipassana meditation course, on the 10th day you practice loving kindness meditation, then you can remember that experience. That's how I started.
So the focus is on the feeling and not the words or the image or anything else. What is the next part now?
So we can start the meditation.
Yeah.
And then after that,
You have it on your.
no, I think it'll just be meditation. Let them meditate. I didn't want to use anything. I decided not to use anything. It's better that way. And I have the insight timer bell. Do you want to use that?
Yeah.
Yeah, just for after 30 minutes.
You want to connect that to the speaker.
Okay.
About the AC, no?
Yeah, on the left.
This one, yeah.
Which can be played from this.
Okay. I think it's already, let me see the insight time. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay. I I want to say to
Is there a
everybody,
bell at 10
please
minutes?
feel free to ask any queries.
What's that?
Nothing is foolish. This is a
I'm
basic
sorry.
workshop. So whatever comes in your mind, please ask.
Delson, is there a bell at 10 minutes?
Is it okay if I see when I go for a walk and I notice a flower bloom, I feel very good? You think it is a loving kindness? Is it that?
Yeah, so the question is, when you're walking and you see a flower and you feel good about it, is that loving kindness? Yeah, that's an experience of joy. That's an experience of happiness, right? That's a feeling of uplift, of being uplifted. So you could use that as your foundation to start with that, and then allow the heart to expand because of that feeling, and then that will bring about more feeling of gratitude and appreciation, which then is part of loving kindness.
The question is asking, I'm a flower first. When I take very slowly setting a good picture, I feel very satisfied. Is that loving kindness?
That's contentment. Yeah. You know, loving kindness is basically this experience that you really have the best wishes for yourself. It begins with that. Like, you really want to do good for yourself. You want yourself to be happy. You want yourself to be at peace and feeling content. And then when you send loving kindness out to another person, to another being, it's the general it's the general wishing of them being well, for them being well. So that experience where, you know, whether you have a sibling or, you know, another family member or a child, and you want the best for them. You want them to be happy. You want them to succeed. You want, you know, whatever it is, all good things to come to them. That's the element of loving kindness.
Excuse me, Delson, is there a 10-minute bell?
I just put it on.
So a 10-minute bell, and then they go to the spiritual friend, right?
Yeah, that's right. So what I'm going to do is, Sister Kema just let me know. On the inside timer, I put a bell at the 10-minute mark. So that reminds you to then go and send loving kindness to your spiritual friend. So for the first 10 minutes, you're going to be sending loving kindness to yourself. And then after 10 minutes and for the next 20 minutes after that, you're going to be sending the loving kindness to your spiritual friend. We can start?
Yeah.
Okay.
Give them an idea of what we are going to do.
So just to make sure you guys understand, we're going to start with sending loving kindness to ourselves for the first 10 minutes. And then there will be a 10-minute bell. And then you switch to sending loving kindness to your spiritual friend. And remember, if you get distracted in that process, you use the 6 R's. So you recognize that you got distracted, release your awareness from it, release your attention from it, relax the mind and body, come back to your smile, come back to the experience of loving kindness, and then repeat whenever that happens again. So we'll have a 30-minute session, and then after that, we'll have another Q. Okay, so let's begin.
There will be a bell at the end of the.
Yeah, there'll be a bell at the end of 30 minutes. So then we'll, okay. So does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I think that 10 minutes to do less to give sampling. Because I think 6 minutes to work to get the mind, to get the feeling. It is tough to get that feeling that you get from having feel that now, it takes some time.
Yeah.
And then that 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I wonder, can we increase that time? How do we?
Yeah, so the question is that it felt like 10 minutes for less time for bringing up that feeling of loving kindness and that warmth. Well, I mean, this was just a timer, but I think you should work with your own internal clock. So if it feels like it takes longer, then it takes longer. That's totally fine. Sometimes it'll come where for the entire meditation, you might not experience any loving kindness. And for that, then we have further instructions where one is either the mind is trying too hard or the mind is not able to bring up that feeling because it's not smiling enough and things like that. So obviously this was the initial practice the first time. So it might take some time to really hone in on that experience, hone in on that feeling of loving kindness. But if it takes 20 minutes, it'll take 20 minutes. If it takes 30 minutes, it'll take 30 minutes. Whatever is the time it'll take is the time it'll take. It's no problem. Yeah.
And then again, I was saying this I have too many associations with the person. Then on those memories and on those stuff, should I have too little, almost detached, I wish the person that way, not too attached. So which person should I choose? So I can start with that. Yeah. And by the end of it, I just saw the experience.
Right. So the question is that the second 20 minutes was a little challenging because there was a choice between which spiritual friend to choose. So the spiritual friend can be anybody, as I said, who you admire. The interesting thing is it doesn't even have to be a friend. It could be somebody that you admire. You know, for some people, it could be the Dalai Lama. For some people, it could be a teacher. For some people, when she was alive, Mother Teresa, for example. So it could be anybody that brings up this feeling of appreciation for them. And I would say, don't let the mind get too hung up on, you know, visualizing the spiritual friend or trying to figure out memories of why they make you happy and things like that. As long as you have somebody in mind and you can just let the mind send that loving kindness to them, that's more than enough. So some people are more visually oriented, so they like to really think about and imagine that spiritual friend in front of them or in their heart. And some people not so much, and that doesn't matter. What matters is you have this intention. It all starts with intention. You have an intention of sending it out to your spiritual friend, and that should be plenty. Yes. Back and forth meaning between. Yeah. 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 So the question is if it's okay to go back and forth between the spiritual friend and yourself. I'd say generally that's not recommended. So if you want to stay longer with just sending loving kindness to yourself, then you can do that. That's fine in your own personal practice. But you should be able to have that feeling for the spiritual friend. And if you see that it's not coming up and you need to go back, instead of going back, just using that 6R process of seeing that there's not enough loving kindness there. When you reignite it, basically the 6 R's is like a starter. It reignites it. You come back to your smile, then that there's a bit of a boost to that loving kindness. So you can do that. Generally, that's because the mind is not able to stay focused on that particular object. So that's a sign that the mind is a little distracted. No big deal. All you do is 6R and you come back. The 6R really helps. Yeah.
So I kind of agree with what at some point, even in my thinking, instead of going back to the,
Yeah.
I would like to say, should I focus on the person? But the emotion is loving kindness. So
Yeah.
So how strict is it that?
I mean,
Not to be emotional, you focus on self.
yeah, so the ratio would be 70% or 80% on the feeling of loving kindness and 20 to 30% on the spiritual front. The quality of loving kindness doesn't change based on whether you're sending it to yourself or to your spiritual friend. This is more of an exercise for you to be able to just be able to retrain your mind to stay with the loving kindness. The exercise is meant to be for your ability to send out loving kindness eventually, as you'll see if you continue with the practice, to be able to send out loving kindness indiscriminately, meaning to all beings eventually. But this is the general practice. You start out with yourself, then you go with your spiritual friend, then you go beyond that until you're sending it to everybody. And so that quality of loving kindness isn't different based on the person that you're sending it to. But I will say, as you progress further, which we'll talk about next week, you will see a change in terms of how the loving kindness is experienced, because it can move up into the head. It can start to expand. You can start to experience feelings of expansion. You can start to feel like you're losing parts of your body, awareness of parts of the body, and floaty feelings and things like that. But coming back to what you're saying, the whole reason why we're doing it is because we're just exercising the mind's ability to send loving kindness to all beings. So that's the reason.
Yeah. Couple of questions. One is that during the first 10 minutes, generating the loving kindness, is it okay to kind of cover multiple meanings? On specific.
Yeah, so the question is, when you're starting the process of feeling the loving kindness, bringing up the loving kindness, is it okay to go with multiple memories or should we stay with one memory? So my response to that would be, it's okay to go through multiple memories if it helps, but the point is, once the feeling comes up, then you let go of the memories as well, whether it's meaningful or just one memory. So it's just that initial ignition, that initial spark of loving kindness that you want to bring up. So if it's one memory or a few memories or an image, doesn't really matter.
The second one was that during the 20 minutes, I found that after a certain time, that feeling exhausts.
Yeah.
So then I can go back to the memory and then develop more of and then further translate. Is that the normal thing?
That's fine. That's fine. So if you see that the loving kindness starts to fade, then you just come back to either the verbalization of may I be happy, or come back to that image. Once you have that loving kindness again, just let go of the verbalization or the image and then stay with that feeling.
For the first 10 minutes, when we have to learn kindness to ourselves. Is it normal to have tears?
Yes, yes, definitely. I mean, there's been stories of people who have done this before, and this is the first time in their practice that they've experienced actual joy or happiness. And you will see people having tears come on, and that's quite natural, and that's fine.
So in the second 20 minutes, can we have multiple spiritual partner or we have to stick to one?
Yeah, in the beginning, you want to stick to just one person. As we'll see next week, we'll talk about how that eventually expands to other spiritual friends, and then other family members, relatives, and then neutral people, and then the difficult people in your life, and then that expands to where you send it to all beings everywhere. But right now, just to start the process of getting your mind accustomed to loving kindness, you want to stay with one spiritual friend and stick with them. If you want to go to somebody else, you can go to somebody else, but that's it. Then you don't go with anybody else. Meaning, you stay with one spiritual friend for the duration of the meditation. But if you find that the mind wants to stay with another spiritual friend, then switch to that, and then don't switch after that at all. If you start switching to multiple spiritual friends, what's happening is that's the mind saying that I'm kind of bored here and now I want to go somewhere else and I want to do something else. So when you see that, then you use the 6 hour process to come back and then stay with that one spiritual friend.
So when do we start the 6 hours?
When you start the 6 hours when you notice that the mind is no longer on the feeling of loving kindness. And it started, like, for example, it started to think, maybe I should go to another spiritual friend. Then you recognize, oh, wait, now I'm no longer on my loving kindness, on the loving kindness. And so as soon as you see that, that's the recognized step. Then you release your mind's awareness from that, your attention from that. You come back to relaxing in the present moment, relaxing the mind and the body. Come back to the smile, and then come back to the feeling of loving kindness. If you're sending it to your spiritual friend, and you're letting it go to your spiritual friend.
Are you saying 6 hours is a continuous process you have to follow to come back to?
Yeah, it's a continuous process until it doesn't become. In other words, in the beginning, if you're starting out in the meditation practice, you'll see that there's a lot of distractions that come up. There's a lot of things that pull your attention away from the meditation object. As I said before, if there are different kinds of thoughts in the background, but you're still able to be aware of the loving kindness, then you don't need to 6 hours. But if you see that your attention is being pulled away, it can happen where you're with your loving kindness and then 5 seconds later you're thinking about something else. If you can recognize that and you use the rest of the 6 hour process and come back, you're retraining your mind. And you're training your mind to be more mindful, as we say. Mindfulness here is remembering to observe how mind's attention moves from one thing to another. Eventually, it might just be 10 seconds here with the loving kindness, or 30 seconds with loving kindness before you get distracted. But you have to continue doing this process of the 6 hours because it's a process of reconditioning the way the mind pays attention. And eventually, you'll be able to stay with your object of meditation for 5 minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time, even 30 or 1 hour, 30 minutes or 1 hour at a time before you have any distraction.
Thanks.
Is there any good time meditation or any time of the day?
Anytime.
Actually said that you can do this, by cooking, by walking, by any activity. Way of living.
Yeah, exactly. Meditation is life, life is meditation. That's what Bhante Vimalaramsi says, the founder of this organization. Yeah. So the 6 hours, we'll handle, do you want to hand this out? So the 6 R's are recognize. Recognize meaning you recognize that your mind was distracted. Release, which is taking your mind away from that distraction. And so the question there can be, okay, I'm releasing my attention away from the distraction, but what am I putting my mind towards? So you're putting your mind towards the step of relaxing. And relaxing is basically letting go of any kind of tightness in the mind or body. So when you come back to the awareness of your mind and body, what you'll notice is there's a subtle tension, a subtle tightness, whether it's in the mind or whether it's just in the muscles of the body. And it's just a matter of relaxing it. It's a matter of just letting go of that tightness and tension. Then you come back to the smile. So you might recognize that you stop smiling, so you bring up that smile again, or you just come back to the awareness of that smile. Then from there, you come back to the feeling of loving kindness and you repeat when necessary. So when you get distracted again, you repeat that whole process. The other thing to know is you might have the 6 R hundreds of times during a session. So the more you 6 R, the more your mind will become sharper when it comes to mindfulness. So if you get distracted, don't allow the mind to beat itself up. It's no big deal. I mean, mind is constantly being distracted by one thing or another. But the fact that you're able to recognize it, the fact that you're able to see it, means that you are already starting that process of mindfulness.
So I have been to retreat in Mumbai meditation, and I have realized at 27th minute I get restless. Today also, I could see that and I'm not able to get over it. Only once I've done 40. So I wonder what it is like. Often it's not going.
That's amazing that your mindfulness is able to see at the 27th minute. You're able to. Yeah. It's just the way the mind works. Sometimes the mind feels like, okay, this is enough. I'm done with it. And you have to treat the mind like a little child. So in other words, you just cajole it into saying, okay, I feel restlessness now. I feel like I want to get up now. But you 6 R and you relax the body, because the restlessness first arises from the body. Because at the 27th minute mark, for example, the body feels like, okay, I need to move. And then that translates into restlessness in the mind. So if you notice that, you might notice there's maybe some kind of tension in the body. So just relax that tension, let that go, let your attention go from that tightness and tension. And then cajole the mind and say, okay, how about 1 or 2 more minutes? Let's see what happens for a couple more minutes. And the mind will start to, like a little child, say, okay, fine, let's see. And then after 1 or 2 minutes, it might come up again. So, okay, it's time to go now. And then again, you cajole it and say, okay, maybe another minute. If you do that, you'll see that it starts to retrain itself to be able to sit for 30 minutes at the very least. And I would venture to say that probably where you were able to do it for 40 minutes, your mind was probably really enjoying the meditation. So when you sit down to meditate, don't make it a chore. I mean, as a general advice, it would be just to make it something that you look forward to doing. It's like I want to go to watch a movie, or I want to go to the park, or whatever it is. Make it fun. Make it something that the mind looks forward to. Once that happens, then whether it's 40 minutes or an hour or an hour and a half, it'll just go by like a breeze.
Okay, I'm trying this for the first time. So what I want to understand is 6 hours. As per your experience or the experience of the students, is it like few seconds or few minutes? What that cycle period is?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would say no more than 5 or 6 seconds you cycle through the 6 hours. So it's as quick as, you make it like a wave, you call it like, you roll it like a wave, you roll the 6 R's. And what that means is, like I said, as soon as you recognize that you were distracted, that's, less than a second that you realize that you were distracted. Then just deviating your attention away from that and then relaxing happens within a second. Then when you relax the mind and body, that's another second. You come back to your smile, that's less than a second. You come back to your object, that's less than a second. So no more than 5 or 6 seconds at the most.
That was written in a computer engineer. So that's a very technical question.
And I'll tell you what, eventually what happens is you can 6R within a second, meaning you go cycle through each of the 6 R's within a second.
Yes, sitting in a meditative pose with your eyes closed, probably more than 10 minutes of fast.
Just use your intuition, however you feel like it is. You can use a timer, but we use a timer because we are under some time constraints. But I would say generally don't use a timer and just allow your intuition to work. One of the practices that you can do or you can try doing, and this is something I was naturally able to do and continue to do since I was maybe 15 or 16, is sometimes I would take a nap in the afternoons, like a 20-minute, 25-minute nap. And I would tell my mind, okay, after 20 minutes, I'm going to wake up. And I didn't use an alarm, I didn't use anything, but at the exact 20-minute or 25-minute mark, I just came out of the nap. So you can practice this for yourself. Before going to bed, you can say whatever time you wake up. Let's say you wake up at 6 in the morning. You could say, all right, I'll wake up at 5:57, or I'll wake up at 5:59, or I'll wake up at 6:02. Doing that, you're actually retraining your internal body clock to be able to be very precise. This will help not only now in the meditation where you have an intuition that 10 minutes are up and then you go into 20 minutes. I would say don't worry about that so much. Just let your mind, let your intuition guide you about that. But this training process of timing it will really help you later on when you go into more advanced levels of practice. And the second part I would say to that, which is make a determination in your mind that before you go to sleep, that when I wake up, I will wake up with a smile on my face. When you start off with a smile on your face, then you start to become mindful right there and then. And you start that process of meditation from the beginning of your day.
Very glad that there are so many questions.
This is more an observation also question. So on the 6 stars, I think the 1, 2, 5, and 6 recognize, release, return, and repeat. I felt I've heard it before in other meditations. There are distractions, we come back. I felt the magic was in the 3 and 4, where it's about the relaxation, which was personally for me the aha in this section. It's an attitude that you're taking. It's not tight.
Yes.
More relaxed. So I just want to see what is the center of the philosophy of the center. Is it the 6 stars or is it the loving kindness? Which one is the more?
Yeah. So generally we use the loving kindness practice because it feels good, first and foremost. It's easier to experience joy and bliss because joy and bliss becomes factors of certain meditation levels that we'll talk about next week. You could use any object in meditation. There's like more than 40 different types of meditation objects. You can use the breath, you can use a visualization, you can use focusing on your body. There's different types of meditations. You can use mantras, you can use whatever you want. But we use loving kindness because it's the easiest to start to experience that joy from the get-go. But I would say, let's say that the practice is focused actually not only on the 6 R's, but primarily as you experience it, the relax and release smile. The relax, letting go of the tension and tightness is on the physical level a very wonderful and important aspect to it. But on a deeper level, what you're doing is you're retraining, you're reconditioning what is known as, in Sanskrit, samskaras, vasana samskaras. And what those are mental impressions in the mind that immediately make you behave a certain way. So the mind and the body have been trained throughout life to experience fight, flight, or freeze, depending upon the situation. It's just instinct. And that fight, flight, or freeze results in the body tensing up. Very subtle, doesn't need to be very extreme tensing. But that's a manifestation of craving, as we understand it. So what you're doing is now you're saying to the body that you don't need to be in a process of fight or flight or freeze. It's okay, whatever stressful situation arises, whether it's meditation in the form of some kind of thought or some kind of unwholesome situation you find yourself in. I don't need to freeze up. I don't need to fight or flight. I can just relax. So doing that, you are reconditioning what we call in English, the samskaras are formations, and tranquilizing what we call bodily formations, tranquilizing the mental and verbal formations. And this you will see manifested when in your daily life, you take things less personally. And you're more relaxed around different situations, and you find yourself smiling more. You might even find yourself seeing that people are more attuned to you now, and you're more attuned to them as well. So these are some of the results of the practice, specifically that relax and release smile step of that 6-star process.
Just ask you one thing. When I started, actually for first 5 minutes, I was enjoying. After 5 minutes, I don't know what happened. I mean, so many thoughts started coming, and at one point I was sitting in my office. So when I could not do anything, even the thoughts were coming.
Yeah.
I could not concentrate.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I would say that's no big deal. I mean, it happens to everybody where suddenly you're really feeling good, and then suddenly the mind starts to experience other things. The key thing here is to be able to recognize it. So that might take longer. I mean, you might be where you're distracted for a good 10 minutes before you actually recognize. You might be distracted for 5 minutes before you recognize. But the key step here is to recognize that you were distracted. So however long that takes is fine. Then as soon as you recognize, then you use the release, relax, re-smile, and return steps. So, just be okay with that. That's fine. That's totally fine. If you can recognize, that's the crucial step. And if it takes 10 minutes, if it takes 20 minutes, if it takes 30 minutes, that's okay too.
Not about this, that I mean, you just concentrate on your breath, inhale and exhale.
Yeah.
I mean, if we do this, both the techniques simultaneously, is it okay?
No, I would say you don't want to mix up techniques. I mean, breathing is great, but if you're going to do a breathing meditation, you would want to use the 6 stars still. That's why I'm saying you can, generally the practice is you notice that you were distracted and you immediately come back to your object of meditation, whether it's focusing on the breath or whether it's loving kindness. But what we're saying here is doing that doesn't actually retrain the mind. I mean, there are ways in which people go into really high levels of samadhi, experience wonderful amounts of bliss and everything, just by doing that whole process of recognizing that you were distracted and then coming back to the object of meditation. But it doesn't translate into transformation of the mind, transformation of the personality. Because even though you recognize that you were distracted and you come back to your object, you're not dealing with that distraction in a way of letting it go. Actually, when you do that, you're suppressing the hindrance. And suppression then leads to those hindrances coming back again, full force. The analogy that I use is like the beach ball. If you have a ball and you put it underwater, you're suppressing that distraction just by coming back to the object. But then in your daily practice, in your daily life, you'll see that those hindrances and distractions come back again with full force. So this meditation, the 6 R's, are meant to be able to deal with those attachments. The hindrances are shedding light on where the mind's attachments are. And once you're able to deal with them in the meditation and let go of them, then they don't hold over your mind as they did before. They become less and less reactive, less and less potent. And so the 6 R's cycle through that and continue to weaken those distractions until those distractions no longer arise and no longer affect your mind in a negative way.
So you as you said that as a practice the 6 R's, and over time, these distractions which are coming slowly, they will be minimized.
They'll be minimized and they'll fade away without any kind of.
So is it that it's in this process, I mean, you will be going towards that particular situation where you have the zero thought?
Yes. Yes.
So it will be a zero thought. We are trying to practice this so that we reach to that level of zero thought.
Yeah, and that will happen eventually, where it comes where the mind doesn't have any thoughts whatsoever, and it actually switches off.
Thank you so much.
Reach that level, you require a lot of practice, maybe 2 or 3 lifetimes.
I keep watching on some YouTube videos. I mean, some gurus and all that, and they keep on telling how to meditate.
Yeah.
Different practices are there. But then ultimately, they say that what we meditate is that we have to reach that particular level of zero thought.
Yeah.
So many of them say that I'm very close to that, but
yeah,
I don't know how close they will be.
Yeah.
But for me, when I actually start practicing for 5 minutes, I'm not into that.
Right.
I get distracted.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, if you get distracted, that's totally fine. And I mean, yeah, 2 to 3 lifetimes. I mean, that's a lot of time. But I was going to say 2 to 3 weeks. No, I mean, if you're really dedicated to the practice, you can start experiencing what we'll talk about jhanas, which are different levels of meditation next week, which will tell you where you are in your practice in terms of how many thoughts you have, what kind of experiences you're having. And some people, if they do like a 10-day retreat, for example, they can go to that level where they experience zero thought by the 6th or 7th day because you're meditating for longer periods of time. So it depends upon not the intensity of the practice, but the duration and how much time you're giving to the practice. So if you can meditate for, let's say, at least an hour a day in your regular practice, and then start to practice for 2 hours a day, you're going to start to see a big difference in terms of how your mind responds to situations. Because it's not only about having zero thoughts, it's about being able to cultivate the positive aspects of the mind, being able to cultivate for example, friendliness and loving kindness, and ultimately wisdom to be able to let go when things need to be let go.
There is a stage called Samadhi also. So is it that zero thought Samadhi also is zero thought?
Yeah, so Samadhi in the context of this practice is actually divided into 8 or 9 different levels of Samadhi. So Samadhi constitutes what's basically a level of bliss, a level of joy, a level of equanimity, a level of feeling oneness with all of creation, infinite space, infinite consciousness, level of nothingness where there are no thoughts. That's the point where there are no thoughts. And then there's a point called neither perception and non-perception, where mind actually goes to the level of the subconscious and starts to deal with those things that you didn't even know that you were thinking about on a conscious level. And eventually you come to a point where mind actually switches off completely. There's no consciousness or awareness there at all. So these constitute the different levels of Samadhi, but Samadhi is one thing because Samadhi provides you the ability to get into these states, but it's yoked with wisdom. And so that wisdom is the ability to see how mind works and how it creates your reality.
So when in this 6 hours, we say release, right? We were able to see that how he said earlier when we used to do small meditation with yoga, and basically when your mind wanders, you have to look at your breath. But I agree that didn't give anything that changed the mind. But here when we see release, you think that mind will listen and maybe leave something. Like you want me to say that?
Yeah, I think to simplify, release is basically just, see, the mind can only do one thing at a time, actually. Even though it feels like it's doing so many things, and even the distractions that you're experiencing feel like they're happening all at the same time. Actually, at the very minutest level, it's only one thought process at a time. So when we're talking about release, we're not saying we're actively letting go of those thoughts. What we're saying is we're letting the mind land away from that thought to a different thought, away from that intention to a different intention. So release is really the transition from recognizing that you were distracted to the active process of relaxing.
Does the distractions have any relation with the Yama Niyama?
Yeah, so yes, that's a good point. There is what are known as the five precepts, the five basic precepts that we have. And those precepts are very similar to the understanding of Yama and Niyama, but it comes to where you have five basic precepts. And the first precept is you abstain from harming or killing any being intentionally. You abstain from taking what is not given. You abstain from sexual misconduct. You abstain from using false or harsh speech. And you abstain from indulging in any intoxicants like alcohol or drugs. Those are the five basic precepts. And then if you go on retreat, there's 8 precepts or 10 precepts, or the monastics have hundreds of precepts, basically. But if you maintain these 5 basic precepts, they have a connection with the hindrances. If you make a commitment in the morning that I abstain from these 5 things, there's a whole thing that you do, which is an intention to say, I undertake the precept to abstain from killing or harming any being intentionally. I undertake the precept to abstain from taking what is not given. I undertake the precept of abstaining from sexual misconduct. I undertake the precept to abstain from using harsh and false speech. I undertake the precept to abstain from indulging in intoxicants. Once you make up your mind to do those things, you're setting up your whole day to be more mindful of when you might do these things. And if you break a precept, it's no big deal. You take the precept again and you make the determination that you won't break that precept again. And there is this connection between precepts and hindrances. We can talk a little bit more about that next week, but basically, anytime you break a precept, it results in the mind becoming more prone to having these hindrances in your meditation practice. Just as a very simple example, if you, let's say, have the intention of harming a being, let's say you see a bug and you step on it, that gives rise to a mindset that has aversion, that has ill will, that has hatred. That can give rise to a mindset in the meditation where you're distracted and you get upset about things. Why am I distracted? Or the hum of the AC is annoying, or the bird chirping in the air is annoying. That sort of irritation is a result of, at some point or another, not necessarily a few moments ago or a few minutes ago, but it could have been something that you did a year ago, or if you go into the understanding of lifetimes, even lifetimes ago. But if you make a commitment to stay with the precepts and you continue to cycle through 6 article hindrances, then you'll start to see that the mind becomes less and less distracted and more collected.
So probably an odd question. How do you compare meditation versus sleeping? Because sleeping also gives you a relaxation of the mind. So is it meditation only for the waking hours or also it helps you to have a better sleep, maybe less sleep or better thoughts? And secondly, what is the health benefits? Like suppose somebody has migraine, somebody has some other diseases, so does it help you to elevate that or minimize it or say completely? So any scientific study has been done on this.
So the first part is when it comes to becoming more mindful, you will actually start to notice the different levels of sleep as well. So you'll have better sleep, you'll have much deeper sleep. And you'll also actually start to distinguish between the waking state, the dreaming state. So some people have lucid dreaming or even a deep sleep state. But in terms of, let's say, any kind of ailments and things like that, meditation helps you to become more mindful of your response to those ailments. So the ailment itself is, for example, the physical pain or some kind of disease or whatever it might be. That can be treated with medicines and proper care and so on. But what meditation deals with is how the mind responds to that. If the mind is agitated by it, it actually makes it feel like that pain is more painful than it actually is. So if you can actually let go of the mental attachment to that pain and deal with that pain with proper care and medicine or whatever is required, then you have less suffering.
Corollary to his question about sleep, sleep itself is an normal physiological function which is necessary for the body and the mind both. So, what is different that meditation does, which sleep does not do?
Well, I would say initially in sleep, you're not necessarily conscious. You're not necessarily aware of what's going on. So the physiological benefits of sleep are absolutely important for the rejuvenation of the mind and body. Meditation allows you to be more aware of the thoughts in your mind. And so by doing that on a long-term basis, that allows your mind to be more relaxed. And actually you'll start to notice that your mind, because it's more relaxed, requires not as much sleep as it did before. So that doesn't mean that you don't sleep less, but you just realize that you're more energetic if you have 6 hours of sleep compared to 8 hours of sleep or whatever it may be.
We are coming towards the end, and it was a very lively discussion. So thank you all for participating in the discussion, and thank you also for the excellent responses. We are going to wind up. So before that, if anyone has a burning question, yeah, follow this.
This is if I may just expand on sleep versus meditation difference. I would just put it succinctly that when you sleep, you're the same person the next morning.
Yeah.
You may have a good night's sleep or a bad night's sleep or whatever, but you're the same person. But when you meditate, you will find slowly, you will become your personality will change. You'll be a more happy, contented. You'll be a different person. Yeah. So that's, I think, the basic difference.
Yeah, that's it. That's definitely the big difference.
So I have one practical question, which I think many of us will have, is the difficulty to physically sit for 30 minutes or 1 hour. You try to fidget or scratch or move the hand or some pain somewhere on the physically. So how do you advise to deal with that?
Yeah, first you have to find a sitting position that works for you. Like I said, there's no magic in sitting cross-legged. If you feel like you want to sit in a chair, I would even say if you feel like you want to lie down, that's fine too. Because some people have back problems, some people have other kinds of knee issues and things like that. So find first a position that works well for you. If you are going to lie down and meditate, I would say be more attentive because there's a tendency for you to fall asleep very quickly. And you can move as much as, I wish we had a Buddha statue, but that's what Monte always says. You can move as much as that statue moves.
So what is the funda for not moving?
Being relaxed, being with your object meditation. If you're really enjoying the meditation and you're staying with the object meditation, even if you're 6 hours, you start losing awareness of the body anyway. So you don't really become too attached to what's going on with the body, if there's an itch or if there's some kind of adjustment to be made or whatever it might be. If you do notice, I will say to the extent that if you do notice that you're having slap and torpor and your head starts to bob like that, then you can gently just bring it up a little bit with awareness. So generally, I would say don't move at all, unless absolutely.
We do have to follow the saliva.
Yeah, I was actually going to get to that. Sometimes you notice that there's saliva in the mouth, and if you need to swallow the saliva, that's fine.
Can you give us some instruction for the week? So that before Sunday, can you give us some instructions what we can do in the coming week?
Yeah, so I would say you want to be able to sit for at least half an hour. If you want to use one of the guided meditations that's there available, you could use those. But just stay with your object and continue doing the 6-hour process. All of the instructions are in here. I think there's 2 pages in this pamphlet. And just follow that. And what you're going to notice is actually that if you're really doing this practice, you're going to notice certain things with regards to how the feeling of loving kindness might move up to the head. You might start to feel more tranquil. You might start to feel more blissful. If these things come up, then I would like you to let me know that, and I can give you further instructions later. But for the practice, for the week, meditate at least for 30 minutes in the morning or whatever works for you. If it can build up to 45 minutes to an hour before next week, that's even better.
Do come next week.
Yeah.
Before we wind up, big thank you to our teacher, Delson. His spiritual name now is Dhammacariya Sobhana. I'll just briefly tell you what it means. Dhammacariya means a teacher who gives instructions like this for meditation and spirituality. And Sobhana means brilliant or shining. So we have seen his brilliance today, and we all can acknowledge that. Thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you.
So I also want to say that Delson does all his teachings completely free. It's all dana based, based on donation. He never charges for any retreat or programs or any teaching, whether it is online or whether it is physically like this. So those of you who are inclined, we have recently formed a trust to support such programs and activities, and we wish to carry on this work in future also. So we have the 2 options of making donations, either in cash or online, and you can consider that. So these donations will help us to further such activities. I once again would like to thank Kamalji and Nitin for allowing us to have all these premises, and I hope and request that in the future too, you will consider providing us with the same facility whenever we have more teachers coming in. Delson doesn't live in India. He is mobile all around the world, and we are lucky that he's here for a month, so we could arrange this program. I wish good luck to all of you. Thanks for joining us today, and hope to see you next week. We also had more than 25 participants on Zoom, so it's not just here, but also additionally many people who participated in the program on Zoom. Actually, the TWIM program is a 10-day retreat, which is on site, which fortunately I and Paolo had a chance to do twice. So it's the whole 10-day program that we have tried to condense in a very short format so that more people can take advantage. It's not easy for everybody to find 10 days or the motivation to find 10 days to go for an extended program. But those of you who do get motivated should try and attend. There are 3 such retreats happening in India by our teacher in September, October, and November. We can share the details with you later on. So those of you who are keen to participate in a longer program can also think about that. I think that's all from my side. We are on dot 11. Anything else you'd like to?
I just wanted to share merit. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's just a small thing that we do, which is, how do you get to this? Yeah. So at the end of every kind of session, what we do is, because we've done some really good work here, we meditate, discuss all of these different things. There's this concept known as sharing merit. And it's just a small little, you could call it a prayer or statement or something. And it's just a wish of loving kindness that all beings benefit from the goodness that we've done here. So you can close your eyes and just have that intention, and I'll just say it, and we'll end the session there. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'll end the meeting.